Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the European Union. I'm going to get really just kind of what it is, some of the basics of it. I've already talked about some things in other videos about like the development of the European Economic Community and things like that that led to the creation of the European Union. So today I'm just going to kind of tell you some of the things that it's all about, what it's kind of doing now, some of the fallbacks, some of the other issues with it as well. Okay, so again, the European Union is, quote, a political and economic alliance of 28 nations in Europe. It actually starts in the 1950s with Belgium, France, West Germany, Italy, and Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, who are major parts of that European Economic Community that I discussed before in a different video. And basically, it's developed into an international organization that is a court, a bank, parliament, and other organizational branches, okay? And each country has representatives that serve in the EU Parliament. Each nation is responsible for sending certain monies to the EU bank, and then the EU runs a certain amount of programs that, if you're in the European Union, you basically agree that you're going to run. And so here we have a variety of different states that are in it. As you'll see, most of the Balkans are not. Switzerland. Norway, appears like kind of sort of maybe in it, which I'll explain, and then Turkey is trying to get in it. But as you can see, pretty much every other major nation and minor nation, for the most part, is in it. Of course, with also the large exception of Russia. Okay, so one of the big things that the European Union is all about is ease of movement. Okay, in order to facilitate trade, most citizens can move throughout these nations with little to no issue. They don't even really need visas or anything like that to travel or stay and work. They don't have taxes or tariffs on trade, so overall it enhances competition. And the idea is to strengthen most nations involved. It's a gigantic job market. If you're in Malta and you're looking for a job in, say, Latvia, like that's something that you can actually do. They have also created a unified currency that most of the nations use called the euro. Okay. And basically 18 of the nations, of the 28 nations, have adopted the euro. And right now, basically 1 euro equals about $1.11 US. And their combined economies actually equal $18.8 trillion, or 22% of the world economy. So this is no joke. And one of the big things that they do is to facilitate trade. So it's building of bridges and tunnels and railways so that people can get back and forth. And really the mass transit system in Europe is pretty remarkable. For instance, one of the things that they do is they build the Øresund bridge that actually connects Denmark, where are we at? Denmark over here, over to Sweden. Now, this area is highly trafficked, okay? So you go through the Øresund Strait. Part of it is a tunnel underground, and then part of it is a bridge. Okay, this is your satellite picture here. So going right from south to north. All right, and again, that's similar to something like you would see with the Chesapeake Bay Bridge in the United States of America. And here is the, obviously, bridge portion. Also, we have the building of the Channel Tunnel to connect the United Kingdom to France via train. And as you can see, it's pretty deep. I mean, it's over 100 miles, or 100 miles, sorry. 100 meters down, not miles, meters. And, so you can go from UK to the France now by train, super easy. And here's an example of the train tunnel. The big thing is the rail system, and it's high-speed railways. You can pause the map and see that you have certain trains, that go from 310 to 320 kilometers an hour. That's 190 to 200 miles per hour. You see the really, really fast ones in purple, then also the ones in red. Less than 200 kilometers an hour, all these ones. But, I mean, you're going deep into Russia, all the way over here to Portugal. Even in places like Ireland, you've got a bunch in England. It really is an impressive system. And again, that's to get people back and forth. And let's just give you an idea of how good this is. So if you from Paris to London, it is about 292 miles. I live right outside of Philadelphia in New Jersey, and that is about about the distance that it would take for me to travel to get to Boston. So in the United States of America, with the trains that we have, okay, it would take you about 5 hours. And if you get medium traffic, you could also drive there in 5 hours. 5 hours by train. So there's really no advantage. It's just if you don't feel like driving. From Paris to London, it takes about 2 hours and 16 minutes. And so that is transformative. And that is what we're talking about here. The fastest of these is the AGV Italo train, which actually has a top regular speed of 230 miles per hour. These trains can go faster than that, but it's more about safety, about carrying passengers. And so, again, the system's pretty impressive. The other thing they are big on is the environment. They're very big on being green. We have really big use of wind, water, and solar power. We have lots of electric cars. Also, they're very aggressive on preventing and prosecuting polluters. And I'll be expanding on the environment a little bit more in a moment. But, really looking to protect the people of the European Union and move more towards sustainable energy. Here's a solar field in England. Here we have some Teslas, very popular over there, electric car. And you can see that with the development of the EU Green Deal, which actually was released in 2019 with an ultimate goal by 2050 to be carbon neutral, which means emissions will be low enough to not have impact on the climate. Okay, that is the goal. The second goal is to have it not impact economics or actually develop new economic sectors around this. Now, they have been doing really well. For instance, from 1990 to 2018, emissions in the EU have dropped 23%, but the overall GDP of the area is up 61%. So what that shows us is that there is a possibility of this actually getting done. Okay, the general plan will address every area of the economy, from agriculture to manufacturing. Monies will also be set aside for people who may be unemployed for a short time as they change things over. But to go along with that, there's supposed to be job training programs as well. Let's give you an example. In the agricultural sector, there are some basic things that they're looking for here to provide access to sustainable food, to increase organic farming, to protect the environment from pollution, as well as preserving biodiversity, which is, of course, really, really important. If you start losing biodiversity, that messes with the food chain, that messes with a variety of different things, and that is no good. Now, there are going to be some hurdles to this, okay? Obviously, the changeover is going to take a while, and going from fossil fuels to sustainable energy. This is where the extra money comes in. There's 100 billion euros that will be set aside to help those communities, particularly, say, in areas like, say, Poland, who has a large coal industry right now. The cost will be approximately 250 to 280 billion euros per year. And some things that they're planning on intending on getting other areas of the world involved in this will be things like carbon taxes. So basically, taxes on products that don't use safe manufacturing practices will see increased tariffs. So places like China and even part of the United States not super thrilled with this. And this is kind of also part of, like, sometimes what we can argue is the drawback of the European Union is that, so when you do big programs like this, there are certain nations, like, say, I mentioned Poland, that have a thriving coal-based electrical grid, as well as it's a big part of their economy. To change people over from that is going to be pretty dramatic, okay? And it's not going to be easy. And you can definitely look at people that would be resistant to it because what they have going on right now is actually working very well. But if you are part of the European Union, that's going to be part of it. And the same thing, the European Union is doing this and charging carbon taxes, but you're a nation that, say, trades heavily with China. That's something that you're going to have to try to work through, but that is part of being part of the overall European Union. They also have a variety of health initiatives in the European Union. It's really about protecting and preserving health. So they do things like many additives in foods, particularly in the United States, are actually banned by the European Union. almost things like food dyes, bromated vegetable oil, which is like in things like soda, growth hormones used in animals, and most preservatives are all banned. They focus a lot on sustainable development, again, for the protections of people's health. And a lot of these nations do provide universal health care, which I'll be talking about in some future videos with the concept of the welfare state. Now, there are some drawbacks, okay, because one nation can really kind of wreck some things. A great example was Greek, or what is known as the Greek crisis. Basically, for years, officials in Greece have mismanaged their money. Basically, the government was spending too much. They weren't even keeping books on certain things. And then in 2008 and 2009, a worldwide recession hit, and Greece's economy went into free fall. But because they were part of the European Union, it impacted them as well. And in the end, like better off countries like Germany had to bail them out to try to stabilize their economy. And they were given 250 billion euros, or at that time, 326 billion US dollars. And they had to do this because a Greek collapse would hurt most of the banks in Europe. And what you have here is someone, I have here future concerns. In much of Europe in recent years, you do have a rise of nationalism. And we've talked about nationalism a lot. And the idea of focusing on the development expansion of your own nation. And many nations are starting to, or some nations, not many, are starting to look at the EU as an organization that is a bit too global in nature and actually just kind of ignores the needs of specific member states. The most notable, of course, will be Britain, which I'll be talking about in my next video. And so, whereas this is a very powerful entity when it comes to economics, there are some criticisms and some people that doubt, should the EU be continuing to function. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon, but they did take a big blow recently with Britain. And so we'll be getting that to our next video. All right, guys, hopefully this gives you a good kind of little general intro to the European Union. And I'll see you guys soon.